Choices, choices, choices. So Torn was written and directed by Freddie McDonald, who also did a short titled So Torn, and this was written by Fred McDonald. I'm sensing either there was a clone situation or a familial involvement, or maybe they're just two people with the last name of McDonald and they just happen to come together right now. So Torn meet do 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 do. So this is currently on Shudder, despite not really being much of a horror and a little bit of a thriller, more of a dark comedy, but this involves a seamstress named Barbara, played by Eve Connolly, who runs a mobile seamstress service that her mother left behind. She's tried to keep it going, but she is struggling mightily. You can tell because of the inflections on her face, the fact she's driving a little beater car with a spool on the back, and she's somewhere in the Swiss Alps or somewhere in a Swiss village. I mean, you know, because while we don't know all the positives about living in Switzerland, the flag is a big plus. Sorry to all the people that happen to be in Switzerland watching this. I couldn't help the bad pun. But she is going to an appointment for a woman named Grace. It is her third marriage, and a button situation necessitates her going back to her shop, which is a bit away. She ends up seeing a wreck that turns out to be a drug deal gone bad, and because of choices, she has a decision to make. What does she do? Does she find a way to maybe have the perfect crime go on? Does she call the police, or does she drive away? Whatever choice she makes, there will be consequences, and it'll be a domino effect. Straight out of the Run Lola Run playbook, because that's where we're going. We're going with 3 different scenarios and a wraparound story and everything, without the electro soundtrack and the crazy Franco Potente hair. But I will say that Eve Connolly is a more than capable lead, and we also have Callum Worthy, who plays Joshua, who is one of the 2 people involved in this drug deal gone bad. We have Hudson, played by John Lynch. We have Kay Callan, who plays Miss Engel. She is an integral part of at least the second part of this story. And a guy, a former or a current customer named Oscar, played by Ron Cook. And we have a few other people involved in this film that certainly has some ambition behind it. And I do like the style as far as how it's filmed. And I think there are moments that do work. I think the usage of sewing spools and the creativity in some parts actually gives me hope as to what Freddy will end up doing in the future. And there are moments where I'm like, okay, this actually isn't all that bad. And the movie overall isn't that bad. Here's a big problem, though, and this is the biggest issue I had. The mention of Run Lola Run, that was 80 minutes. Bell to fucking bell. And even then, there were parts that were a little repetitive, but Run Lola Run really is just an adrenaline-fueled rush. This has moments that are pretty good, some that are darkly comedic, but it is also 15 minutes longer than it needs to be. There are parts that could have been cut. There are parts that are beautiful to look at. There's some great cinematography. And again, Eve is pretty good, and there are some, nice little sprinklings of, references to stuff from before, all the choices having consequences. That's fine. That's perfectly fine, and I look forward to seeing what else Freddy can do in the future, because this shows promise. It's just not a film that I can fully recommend beyond saying, give it a shot. Maybe you'll really end up enjoying it. To me, this is just above average overall, because it drags way too much for a film that has a short story concept like this. That being said, it is on Shudder if you want to check it out. I'm going to get into spoilers. So 3, 2, 1, and spoilers. I don't know why I did it like that, because I don't know how to sew. But anyway, I did like how it was filmed. I will once again reiterate that. But we show her in 3 different scenarios. Her in a field, her in a police shop, or in a little area, and also her, basically just absolutely beat up. She's in every situation she's in, she winds up dead, basically. So, after Grace is basically a full-on bitch to her, she ends up knocking the button down the grate, and instead she didn't want to pay for a dusty button, and inadvertently doing that causes this ripple effect, and there we are. I will say the actress playing Grace is a mean old bitch, and I mean that with respect. She does a pretty good job there, but oh, just get my button, you stupid girl, because she knew her mother and that kind of stuff. So she sets off for her shop. She sees a motorcycle wreck. It is Joshua, and who is the son, by the way, of Hudson, and also a man named Beck, without two turntables and a microphone. Basically, she has to make the decision. She calls the police, but then in law enforcement, I guess you could call Miss Engel, but she ends up hanging up the phone. She decides the smart thing, the first thing to do, is to basically use her sewing methods, and there are shots of sewing machines and stuff going on, and a lot of thread being used, because so it seems we have a perfect crime on our hands. She notices these two guys are fucked. They're both on this side of the road. She decides to drag one across Beck, and then she decides to get string together and, like the spools, and she gets all this stuff going where she ends up literally dragging the guns to them, and they end up shooting each other. The perfect crime. And then she throws powder, she throws a whole bunch of stuff. She makes it look like this was a goddamn wreck, and these guys did that. Then she was going to take this briefcase full of money and take it away. Now that seems like a really good idea, but she has a problem. She couldn't get her second needle. That's how she was able to basically get the guns to do that. And she got one needle, she didn't get the other needle, and she ran it over when she ran over the second needle, which inadvertently flattens her tire because it is about the size of a Fiat. In fact, I think it is a Fiat. But that was a nice little bit. There were actually some cool moments there. But then she ends up getting back to the shop. There's she ends up getting back to the shop, but before that, she actually takes the guy Beck and brings him to her shop because she finds out he's not dead. So she's going to tie him up and basically stuff something in his mouth and do all this to, have the briefcase, and have all this money. It's like Psycho if Psycho involved more sewing. But before Beck gets something stuffed in his mouth, he basically says, he's coming for me and he's coming for you. You do not want to mess with this family. And that's who Joshua is, the other guy. And so Oscar shows up, this old guy with some, cool, merch that he got from her. And basically there are, these talking portraits. They have audio recordings and everything. It's a really cool, way, that they did this stuff. But the thing is it's not her passion. She's good at it, but it's not her passion. It was her mother's passion. And she talks about her mother a little bit later on. And then Hudson arrives, and he ends up shooting her, and then ends up actually choking her out with thread. So there you are. That's it. So that's the end of the movie. Oh, wait, no, we have the second choice. She calls the 911 equivalent there over in Switzerland. Miss Engel shows up, and oh, damn it, Barbara, you got involved in this. And her robe got ripped up. Now, why the hell would she be in a goddamn robe? Is she doing a judgment? Is she the only judge there? Is it judge, jury, executioner? Engelcutioner? Disappointed I didn't think of that first. So she basically says, your whole life ahead of you, you just don't end up like your mother. It turns out that her mother had some issues as well. It's not really said flat out what really happened to her, but there are some problems that have happened, The mother's no longer there, by the way. And Engel basically has all of them trapped. She says to Barbara, let's get both of these guys in there. So Beck, Joshua, and Barbara are in this room, this waiting room. And Engel goes in, and she is marrying Grace and her husband, who I forgot the name of. I think Melvin. I don't actually totally remember, but it's not important. It was kind of cool that she was doing this. Now, the thing is in the first one, she was getting the button and actually did put the button on Grace, and everything was fine. But then she got shot by Hudson and strangled in the goddamn field. So now we got this where she's right there. She goes and sews the button right on Grace because she put a pin on her, but the pin was rubbing in, poking in, so she's bloody all over her wedding dress, so that's no good. Then she comes up with a creative thing of putting spooling string in and getting like a little cone thing and trying to get these keys, trying to get this stuff. And she has Beck get his belt because they're all handcuffed. Hey, just one arm's handcuffed. Get this belt, get the keys, get yourself freed, and go off. Beck basically ends up getting himself freed and then ends up trying to take off. That doesn't really work because Hudson shows up and decides to shoot Miss Engel, and then ends up inadvertently shooting Barbara after. And this is kind of a cool moment where she has the string and she has the stuff, and she ends up getting it in the socket, and then shoots the other part into his gun and fries him. But then he ends up shooting her, so she ends up dying there. So that's no fucking good. But then the third one is drive away. She gets the button, and then she drives back and sees Hudson shooting back and is like, oh shit. Now it's getting ridiculous. He gets Joshua. They end up at a restaurant. She ends up basically being forced to pretend they're family. And you forget everything you saw. This never happened. You do that, and there you are. Oh, you'll stitch Joshua in the bathroom, by the way. Apparently, this little diner is straight out of An American Werewolf in London, playbook, where they just don't want to care about the violence, and just as long as I see nothing, I know nothing, or whatever the Swiss equivalent is. Oscar then just happens to show up because he had his stuff with him and saw the the little sewing box thing that talks, and everything, and realizes, holy shit, Barbara's here. So I'm just going to wait here for Barbara. Hudson is talking to Oscar. This is after he's kind of grilled Joshua a little bit, and then he grills him a little bit later after Oscar sees that Barbara's okay. Oh, what's happened? There's blood on the floor. No, this is my cousin. He got hurt. I fixed him. I'll see you tomorrow, Oscar. And then it turns out basically that the reason that Joshua ended up in this situation is he kind of went a little nuts with the bullets and everything. And the deal didn't go all that well, hence why him and Beck ended up in the wreck, I guess. We didn't really see that, not that we needed to, but it was sort of just plopped out there like gruel. And he doesn't like how his son was going to betray him. Barbara mentions that her mother was, whatever she was doing. I mean, somehow she's dead. She was either down a bad path of drugs or down a bad path of illness, whatever it is. But she's no longer doing that. She's no longer around. Barbara then basically told Joshua in the bathroom before, hey, there's this string. You're going to pull the first pull the second and the first. You're going to basically pull this stuff. And we end up seeing the gun trick from before. That's kind of where I said a little bit of this is repetitive. Where he ends up getting the guns and he ends up shooting him. She ends up shooting him basically. Ends up shooting Hudson. While Barbara was pulled out to get Grace's button on her because Grace just so happened to see that she was there. It's a small town, I guess. But then she finds the case and she leaves while Joshua drags himself to his car and starts driving. He's not doing all that well, by the way. And then she starts putting cash in the register and everything. And then, there's a bomb in there and it blows up. And now she's dragging herself out much like Joshua was dragging himself along the road. So there you go. She drags herself out. She's staring up. She manages to see Joshua. And that's it. That's the end of the film until we cut back to the wedding, or just before the wedding. And Grace's button falls on the goddamn grate, and she gets it, cleans it off and everything, and puts it on her. She still hands her money, whatever it is. And then, instead of turning to the left, she turns to the right. Tamina Pass is the name of it. It's not surprising that something named after a really bad second-generation wrestler would not go so well. If you don't get it, then you're not a wrestling fan. But she goes down this other path, the right path, and she sees Hudson. And he's waving a gun, doing this kind of stuff, and knocks on the window. And says, roll down your window, open. Where's Tamina Pass? And she points. So, he says, wait, gets her cash, throws it in the car, says, this never happened. And then he goes off. And then she's happy because she's either going to be able to liquidate her mom's assets and do whatever, or she's gonna keep the business open and just continue to do shit she doesn't want to do. Whatever she decides to do, it's all about choices, choices, choices. My choice would have been to cut this movie down by about 15 minutes because I think that's what it needed. 95 minutes is a bit long for something that, even though it had moments, there were parts that dragged a little bit too much. There were parts that were a little repetitive. It was what it was, though. I think Freddie McDonald shows himself to be a filmmaker to watch. There's potential here. Not my favorite. Didn't hate it, though. C+. I'll say C+. So let me know your thoughts in the comments. Like, share, subscribe, Twitter, Letterboxd, Blue Sky handles in the description. I'm John Rentlund. Until we thread the needles of life again. That doesn't make sense. Needle the threads of life. Nah, fuck it. Happy trails to you.